we're seeing this utterly invertebrate, pusillanimous surrender by the Republicans in Congress, who are allowing Donald Trump to absolutely trample the powers of Congress, rewrite the laws, impound appropriated money. And they're not putting up a fight simply because they're in his party and they're acting like members of a religious cult, sleeping on the basement floor, listening to tapes all night.
Welcome to the Practivist Pod, the practice of activism made practical.
Today, in addition to talking about the latest revelations on the Republican budget abomination, we are going to report back from our surprisingly inspiring weekend at the California Democratic Party convention.
And then I have a truly great conversation with a truly great legislator and the epitome of resilience and perseverance, Representative Jamie Raskin.
I'm Jessica Craven.
I'm Steve Pearson.
Stay strong. It won't be long. Yeah, yeah. We will build a better world.
Okay, Jessica, I'm going to try for this one. Pusillanimous? I can't even do it.
It's pusillanimous. Pusillanimous. Yeah, it's simpler than you think. Pusillanimous. Yes, that's
pusillanimous.
It.
There we go.
Yeah.
You know, he said it. I had to look it up. And in my own defense, my champion Scrabble playing brilliant wife also didn't know the definition of pusillanimous. But yeah. I'll share it with our listeners who may not know that word. Showing a lack of courage or determination, timid. So that's the word that he used along with invertebrate, which, as you can imagine, means not having a spine, to describe the Republicans.
I think it's really good. I actually must confess that I'm a vocabulary freak, and I also did not know what that word meant. So I don't be ashamed. Yeah, I've heard it, but I could not have told you what it meant. So yeah, you're good. You're good.
I didn't want to interrupt him while we were talking to ask him what it meant, but he said that with a little gleam in his eye, and I don't know if it was because he knew that I didn't know what that word meant or because it was such a perfect description of Republicans. But either way, Jamie Raskin for the win.
Yeah. And you just never interrupt Jamie Raskin. Like I wouldn't. I'd be like, I can't. No, that guy. Let him speak. No.
Yeah, so. A great interview coming up. So I encourage everyone to stay tuned for that. And also want to say happy Pride Month and recognize that. I hope people are heading out to Pride events in their neck of the woods, wherever they are. It's always great to celebrate Pride Month and all of the great diversity in our country. It's especially important to do it right now when, with all these bullshit attacks on DEI and the diversity that makes us so great. So I hope everyone makes these Pride events, which are so much fun. If you haven't been to one, it's just a blast. You got to go. But let's make them even bigger this year than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, and here's another thought is that if you have a local Pride event, find out whether they need help with money, because it turns out that, 19 large corporations, Judd Legume reported on this yesterday, have pulled out of supporting Pride, including Anheuser-Busch, PepsiCo, Tiffany & Company, the company I used to work for.
Oh, wow. Gosh, I didn't know you worked with Tiffany.
That's back in another life. For a story for another time. But yeah, it's very unlike me. I don't even wear jewelry, as you all know, anyone who's seen me. But I did because I needed a job in retail, and I got one there.
Sure. So
they used to be a great company. They used to really be ethical, and I was hugely disappointed to see that. And honestly, would not shop there. Again, I've got a queer kid, so these things really affect my buying choices, and I hope they'll affect everybody's buying choices. Lowe's pulled out of supporting Pride. You can see the entire list. We'll post it actually in our show notes, but the queer community is under attack from every direction. And as the mom to a queer person, but even if I weren't the mom to a queer person, there are hate crimes happening. Stand up for them. donate to amazing organizations like the Trevor Project, and also don't shop with companies that are putting little pride flags up on their, social media profile, but then doing bullshit like that. It is unacceptable in this moment in particular.
Absolutely.
Pisses me off, really does. So, but what my original point was, look for, if you can donate to your local pride, they probably need the money more than they ever have.
Great tip. Great tip. And, we heard over the weekend, the two of us were in Anaheim for the California Democratic Party convention. And we heard a great speaker from the Trevor Project, an amazing organization. Definitely deserves, if you're not familiar with it, deserves your money and support. They help at-risk LGBTQ kids, adults, who are have suicidal ideations, and they're been around for a while, but fantastic organization and very powerful speaker there. And you also talk about boycotting these companies and the power of that, not shopping at these companies that don't reflect our values. Well, we had Dolores Huerta speaking, 95 years old, at the convention, and calling for a Target boycott. And I literally got chills because, if you don't, everyone should know who Dolores Huerta is. But if you don't, she organized farm workers side by side with Cesar Chavez. And she was the architect of the grape boycott and the lettuce boycott that led to all those gains. She knows the power that we have as people to put pressure on companies and the power of money and all of this. So hearing her calling for those boycotts at 95 years old was really, really powerful. And also all the context, the history that she gave behind all the struggles we've been through before, the moments when we really felt like all was lost, and these great movements that came up out of that struggle to move us where we are today, which feels, very bleak, but we are certainly in a very different place today than we were, 95 years ago when Dolores Huerta was born. Yeah, right. I agree. There were, I don't know if we're going to talk about the convention now, but the other speaker I thought was really amazing was Shirley Weber, who is our Secretary of State. She's older as well, and she's obviously been in the fight for a really long time, and her father was a sharecropper from, I believe, Arkansas. Is that where they're from? I think that's right. Yeah, they had to flee in the middle of the night, one night, because he was about to get lynched. She has lived through it. And she really reminded us, she's like, this is not just a Donald Trump fight. The fight is more than Donald Trump. Donald Trump will eventually be defeated, and there will be someone else. She really emphasized, this is who we are, is we fight these forces, and we will always have to fight them. There will always be another Donald Trump. The sad truth is there will always be someone who's going to seize on racism and fear of, marginalized communities to gain power and wealth. And that's Donald Trump. That was, I don't know, whoever else you want to name from history, but this is an ongoing fight. And, she was really inspiring as well. I'm listening to the Secretary of State, and I'm like, yes, but she was wonderful. These older people have so much to teach us, these older activists who have been in the fight for a really long time, about resilience. Absolutely. I when I'm around these older activists, there's two things that I'm reminded of. One is they actually tend to carry a lot of joy with them because they're part of this community and they're doing this work to move us forward. And that brings joy, Yeah. And the other thing is, as much as we get rightfully really, alarmed and freaked out about all these new things that are happening, they tend to have this attitude of, same shit happening again. Here we go again. We've been here before. Maybe it's a little different. Maybe this time they're doing some other illegal shit that they hadn't tried before, but we've been fighting this fight. We're going to continue fighting this fight. Doesn't change what we're going to do. Doesn't change how we're going to meet this moment. And that always gives me a lot of perspective and inspires me. And I'll say also, just a little plug. I don't know, it was a few years back, but Secretary Shirley Weber came on How We Win podcast, and I had a great interview with her and learned more about her. She is an amazing person and just brilliant. So Yeah.
Yeah, you could tell. No, you could tell. I've never heard her speak before, and I was like, God damn, I want to know more about her. She's amazing.
Oh yeah, she's fierce.
Yeah. And like not trying to, there didn't appear to be a lot of ego. It felt like she was just there for the struggle, not for Shirley Weber.
Oh, totally. And that's the thing about, especially Dem conventions where you have a lot of electeds or people who are seeking office who are speaking. And so you're like, okay, they're trying to present their best self, or these are their talking points or what they've kind of got onto. And when you see someone like Shirley Weber that's just up there meeting the moment, being authentic, it's really exciting. And, I know you have some other speakers that inspired you. Chris Kluwe was fantastic. The former
Amazing.
kicker for the Minnesota Vikings, who was arrested doing an act of civil disobedience at the Huntington Beach City Council
That's right.
a couple months ago. After he spoke, a friend who was sitting next to me leaned over and said, "What's he running for?" Because, you're just assuming everyone there is running for something. And I'm like, nothing. He's not running for anything. He is up there making his voice heard and just being generally awesome.
Yeah. And that was the reason that this was the best convention I have been to. I mean, I didn't get to go to the Kamala Harris convention, so maybe that would have been better, but this was the best, hands down, the best California Democratic Party convention I've been to. And I've been to a lot of them at this point. Usually that's exactly what it feels like. Oh, this person's running for office, so they have to speak. This person's running, so they have to speak. It's all about them. And this time it really did feel like most of the speakers were speaking to the common fight. And we got to hear from lawmakers who may or may not ever run for higher office. But, Sidney Kamlager-Dove was one that I found really amazingly impressive. Mm-hmm. Shirley Weber was another one. Lorena Gonzalez, I thought, was phenomenal. These were just, state legislators who were, but you got to see them as sort of fierce fighters in their own right. And it's a great reminder that even though we can get really frustrated with Adam Schiff because he voted for the Genius Act, as did Padilla, our federal lawmakers can be really frustrating, as can our state lawmakers, but there are also, we've got this great bench of people who we rarely get to hear from. And in this convention, those people were highlighted, which I really appreciated, because someone in the morning said to me, I really hope that what I'm going to get from this convention is a feeling of hope, but I'm not super optimistic about that because we just knew the way conventions usually were. And I'm pretty sure that by the end of that day, she had gotten what she wanted. I know I did. And I was not expecting to leave there feeling fired up and hopeful, but I actually did. So kudos to whoever booked the speakers. It was much better than usual.
Shout out to Ben Seinfeld, political director of the California Democratic Party, for doing that. He was the one that booked those speakers, and we always get a lot of folks talking about who is going to lead, who's going to be the future of the party, and we saw some of those folks. And Malcolm Kenyatta gave a great speech, and also I got to say. I know that we're not happy with all of his votes and kind of scratching our head on some stuff, but Cory Booker, started off, and he's such an inspiring speaker to me. He really gave a great story, again, talking about a dream he had of his grandfather and in the struggles of our grandfathers and their love for us and the light that we are all, that North Star. I talk about the North Star a lot. He was talking about this light that we're all, seeking and heading towards at the same time. I thought that was really inspiring. And then, of course, the final speaker, which we don't want to get into 2028 right now. We need to focus on the work at hand and the midterms. But Tim Walz making a pretty good argument for 2028, I have to say.
He was unbelievable.
He was unbelievable. And I'll just say really quickly, when he talked about going to red states and purple states and talking to people about these issues that transcend party. Like, he's like, they don't give a shit about Republicans or Democrats, and really talking about it not being a left-right issue, but a top-bottom issue, which is exactly what it is. And And some politicians will say that, or say they went out and talked to some Republicans and found that common thing. And I'm like, bullshit, like whatever.
Yeah.
You say you can be like the bridge. I believe it with him. I really believe
100%.
that he can reach out, and he was compelling. But I want to hear your thoughts.
No, I agree. I mean, he was, again, like I almost didn't, as you know, I almost had to leave to go pick up my kid, but I was like, I'm going to try to stay. And I'm so glad I did. He brings authenticity, which you and I have talked a lot about, how important that is in any successful politician right now. The bullshit detector in especially young Americans is so finely tuned at this point that if you are saying one thing and doing another, or just, if you're a Gavin Newsom, and we could maybe just touch on the fact that he didn't bother showing up to his own state's convention, which I really take exception to. But whatever, he's gone off the deep end anyway.
Let me say forward, I don't want to dig into that, but
Please.
I will say not only did he decline the invitation to show up, but he was pissed that Governor Walz was there.
Right. Yeah. There's a hand gesture for that, but I won't do it here just because I'm going to try to keep things relatively family friendly. But yeah, so Tim Walz spoke in his stead, I guess. And it was incredible. And what Gavin Newsom will never have, sadly for him, unless maybe he has a big life-changing event, is that kind of authenticity that Tim Walz just brings naturally. I believe that he is 100% the same person on that stage that he would be in his home alone with his family. And I love that guy. Like, I literally love him. Yeah. And he was magnificent. He blew the roof off. And whether or not he runs for president, he brought something we all needed in that moment. I hope he will continue to bring it. I think he is such a valuable voice, such a genial and smart person. And I just love him. I'm so glad he's on a national stage now. I'm glad that Minnesota has to share him with the rest of us. Thank you, Minnesota.
Yay, teachers, too. He's a teacher.
For sure. I mean...
Well, let's quickly go over some of the new revelations. Let's quickly go over the new revelations that we have on this budget abomination. First of all, I've been calling it that. Elon Musk just called it. I love it when the kids start fighting. It's getting messy. If the consequences weren't so dire, it would be my favorite reality show. But I actually really hate it. The bullet points on this CBO, which for those, the Congressional Budget Office, is a bipartisan group that analyzes budget bills, and their recent findings are that 11 million would be without health insurance as a result of this bill, with 2.4 trillion added to the national debt. Yeah.
And that's, if we should specify that is, they're taking for granted a certain performance from the economy as a result of the tax cuts. If the performance is not that good, then which many people feel like the CBO tends to overestimate how well the economy will do. I mean, the CBO is pretty accurate, but they don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
It could add more. And also, I was reading this week about the bond market, and if the bond market starts to really freak out, interest rates are going to shoot up, and then this 2.4 trillion becomes 3.4 trillion, 4.4 trillion. Like, interest rates could completely change the equation on this. And that's why people keep referring to the bond market as like another factor in this whole debate. Because if they really come out strongly saying, like, we are going to be raising interest rates XYZ, that could throw everything into uncertainty. But yes, for right now, this is what the CBO is saying. And this is bad enough. This is very bad.
Very bad. And we tell you this, not just to freak you out, but to get you on those phones again, calling your senators, because it is in the Senate now. And there are definitely some Republican, budget hawks in the Senate who, will not be pleased with this CBO report, and we can put pressure on them. I hate to rely on the even more conservative faction to save us here, but I think it's going to come out of the Senate looking very different, but it will not if we don't put pressure on them and make those phone calls.
Well, we know Ron Johnson is a no on it, right? Unless they make steeper cuts, which I don't think they will. So that's 3 more votes we have to find. I mean, it's not easy. It's not definite, but it is at least possible, because we did it in 2017 with the ACA fight. So It's conceivable Josh Hawley is very unhappy with the Medicaid cuts. We know other senators are really wavering because of the clean energy tax credit cuts. So it's a needle that they have to thread that is getting increasingly difficult as more information about the bill comes out. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene came out yesterday saying, "Oh, I had no idea about the AI deregulate." I mean, the thing is, though, they didn't read the fucking bill.
She didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't know. So I'll give her that ignorance card.
Yes. She doesn't know. But the truth is, a lot of Republicans didn't read the bill. And remember, what's his name? The lawmaker who had the town hall last week, Mike Flood, who admitted, "Oh, I had no idea about the contempt thing. I didn't know that was in there." They didn't read the fucking bill.
No.
They voted on it without reading it. They're desperate for their tax cuts, and frankly, the rest of it, they're fuzzy on. And so our job is to make sure our senators are not fuzzy on what else is in the bill, how much we hate it, and every day that we get an Elon Musk coming out against it, that we get any other person coming out against it, is a day in our favor. And so the cracks are there. They may be fine cracks now, but if we keep hammering really hard, those cracks can expand, and so don't stop calling. Every day, please keep calling. There's my rant. Rant done.
A valid and important rant. Will you educate me and everyone else on the rescissions? Because I've been moving my daughter out of her apartment and back home, and been juggling a lot. And so I don't really know a lot about that. And I heard you talk about it when we were prepping for this. So what's going on there, and how can we help?
Yeah. So I will start by saying I'm not quite as well educated on rescissions as I am. I feel like now I've become a minor policy wonk on this fucking GOP bill just because I've been on so many meetings about it. Yeah. But what I will say about rescissions is basically the rescissions package is so Trump sent this rescissions package for $9.4 billion to Congress. And basically what it is an admission that Elon Musk's Doge cuts were illegal, which in fact they were, right? We all know that. They did not go through legal channels. Congress has the power of the purse. These were funds that were already appropriated. So Elon Musk could not legally do what he did, which is why so many courts have blocked him. So this is Trump sending a bill to Congress, sneaking back in to say, hey, could you make those cuts legal, please? So this rescissions package is basically saying we want to cancel $9.4 billion in appropriated money that has already been appropriated by Congress, in this case for public broadcasting, and then a bunch of foreign aid. It's mostly USAID, PEPFAR, which is a overseas AIDS program, which, by the way, is keeping so many people alive. So Trump, who previously was able to blame Elon Musk and say, oh, I don't know about these cuts. Elon Musk is doing it. It's Doge. Now he is putting his fingerprints on these cuts. Trump himself is saying, no, I want to make sure that we cut USAID, which, by the way, 300,000 people already have died as a result of those cuts. I read somewhere like 300 people an hour. It's like we are looking at millions of fucking people who are going to die because of those cuts, which, by the way, this is a tiny percentage of the money that this country spends. It's like less than 1% of our budget, and most of them will be children. So as I said yesterday on a TikTok, don't tell me you're a fucking Christian if you support Republicans who are in office right now, who are going back to double down on cutting funding for starving children. That is like pocket change for the United States. It's vile. But so when you call your representatives, you just please mention, vote no on that fucking rescissions package, please. Now, from what I understand, and I don't understand why, we can't filibuster these. So I worry we have to get some Republicans to vote no on them. We have to get some Republicans to sort of realize their Christianity and say, oh, I don't know if I can vote for these cuts to USAID. So just work on them, please. Work on your representatives. Don't say it doesn't matter. Don't say they're not going to listen to me, because lives are at stake. Many, 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 many lives. Sorry, rant over.
Thank you again for another important rant. And it's terrifying and grotesque and heartbreaking. I can only think another way to appeal to some of these legislators, Republican legislators, is all this food that's going to waste, and the impact on farmers and our economy as a result of these these cuts and the decimation of USAID. You know, a lot of their constituents
devastating
are going to be
farmers.
devastated by all of it. So, there's some pressure that we can put on that as well. So,
and use the word soft power too. I mean, this is
Yes.
is about global power. It's just
Absolutely.
so stupid. It is. Guess who's going to fill that vacuum? And you can say this when you talk to them: China,
Russia
who
and
will
China.
step in, Russia and China, and they will gain global power that we will never get back. So. As with all of Trump's policies, there isn't a single smart aspect to it. It is strategically dumb in every single fucking way.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Done.
This was a specific policy of Putin. Putin has wanted to decimate the USAID for a long time for exactly the reason that you're saying, is because as soon as we pull out of those aid programs, they parachute in and take that soft power from these developing nations. And, it's disaster. So having said that, that's, another thing to fight for. It will make our calls. We'll add that to the calls. Want to mention again, coming up, of course, June 14th, are the No Kings protests, coinciding with this, saw this coming, ballooning budget for Trump's birthday parade, military parade, which is going to now cost more than initial estimates thought, of course. Not that we're surprised about that. When we're talking about kids dying of starvation because we're not, sending them aid, and he's spending millions on this parade. It's
49 million. Is that what the number is now? I think it's 49 million, including 16 million to repair the streets after they destroy them by running
with the
tanks
tanks
on them.
Yeah. No comment, no words. This is a podcast. I'm supposed to say stuff, but I'm speechless on that one. So anyway, June 14th, get out there in the streets. We're going to make this the biggest one. NoKings.org. What is, having said that scary stuff, what's your reason for hope this week?
So, well, you stole my Democratic convention, which probably would have been mine, but that's okay. I like you, so I let you steal it. Well, I was
Yay.
excited to see that the Supreme Court declined to take up two appeals from Maryland and Rhode Island, and these were two gun cases that, had they taken them up and had they ruled the wrong way, some good gun laws would have been overturned and some bad precedent would have been set. So, a stopped clock is right twice a day. This was, the Supreme Court got one of their, rights there. And because you and I were talking about this before, I would just add, on top of this specific case, the fact that Amy Coney Barrett has turned out to be something of a swing vote and sometimes votes in a way that makes Trump mad is just something that, I didn't expect. I'm not going to say I'm grateful for it because she's still pretty awful, but it could have been worse. We could have gotten an Alito or a Thomas, and instead we have another Roberts. So I'm grateful for that too. I'm glad that we're not,
I know. I've been burned putting the Supreme Court as my reason for hope on this show before, but
I know.
I have tenuous hope there, and MAGA land is calling her Amy Coney Barrett now, which
Coney. I love that. Welcome to the resistance, Amy Coney Barrett. Even if you didn't want to be here, you're in it now.
Look, it's a biggish tent.
It's a big tent. It's not even a tent anymore. It's just a tarp. It doesn't even have sides because it keeps getting bigger.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and my reason for hope, of speaking of big tent, it was, of course, the Dem convention. And what I'll say I really appreciated was overall, the speakers really took in the gravity and seriousness of what we're going through right now. I didn't find sugarcoating. I didn't find older politicians kind of getting distracted and saying we're going to be able to do the same things the same way or whatever. People really understood the moment. But also brought everyone into it. And this is what conventions are supposed to do. You know, you have your volunteer, your activist base, and you want to get them fired up. You want to give them hope, and you want to, you know, keep them united in this fight. But I really thought they did it in a constructive and meaningful way. And it gave me a lot of hope. We certainly have plenty of disagreement, plenty of issues to hash out. You know, no one's going to be perfect for everyone. But it gave me hope that we can be largely united coming into the midterms and focused on the work that we have to do to fight this regime and take back power. And there's nothing more important than that. So that gave me a lot of hope.
Yeah. I agree. And can I just add one thing to that, which is that I mentioned this in the TikTok I made about it, but the swag bags were better this year. So so let me just say, if you haven't been to one of these conventions, the first few years I went, in fact, every year I've gone, I'm a, you know, deep down environmentalist, climate person. I've been horrified at these swag bags because they give you all this plastic shit that is useless, right? Like there's always a plastic cutting board with some politician's name on it. There's always a pot holder, like an oven mitt with a politician's name on it, bunch of pens, bunch of like plastic. I have
one in my pot holder drawer. Yeah.
Oh, do you? You actually saved it. You see,
probably.
I'm like, I'm not going to use this. So anyway, I've been over the years, I have complained. I've mentioned it in TikToks, and the Environmental Caucus has complained about, like, there was one year during COVID when the convention was online and they mailed everybody one pot holder with like some politician on it, and we were just like, what the fuck are you doing? So anyway, this year, no pot holders, no plastic cutting boards. In fact, no plastic except for one Betty Yee plastic bag. But then there were a couple buttons, couple pens, and that's it. And I just mentioned it to say that, like, even wherever you are, whatever organization you're within, like, you can fight for these kinds of small changes. And it seems kind of stupid, but it's also like, this is what we do, is we push for change wherever we are, whether we're in the PTA or the Democratic Party or whatever. Hey, just like, where can we cut away at the edges? And institutional change comes slower, but it will come when we're pushing for these small incremental changes. So I feel pretty good about that swag bag this year.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job. And good job, Dem
Sorry
Party.
You didn't get a pot holder. Now I feel bad. I'll get you a pot holder.
I wanted
if
a
you
matching
need
pot
one.
holder for no, I'm not. And yeah. All right. Well, enough about that. I'm excited for everyone to hear. It was such an honor to have a conversation with really one of my heroes in Congress right now, Jamie Raskin. Congressman Jamie Raskin represents Maryland's 8th Congressional District and is the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. He has authored several books, including his most recent New York Times #1 bestseller, Unthinkable: Trauma, Truth, and the Trials of American Democracy. Thank you so much for being here. We talk a lot on this show about building resilience, and I truly can't think of anyone who epitomizes resilience and perseverance in the face of both personal and professional trauma than you. So it's an honor to have you here, and you also happen to represent my mom and formerly represented my dad, who, I don't know if you can see back over there, there's a picture of him with President Johnson. He was counsel to President Johnson and was a huge fan of yours and really loved the work that you were doing. So how are you holding up? We got rescheduled because you were, in this budget fiasco for 48 hours straight and had no sleep. How are you doing?
Well, Steve, thank you very kindly for those wonderful words. And it makes my day to learn about your dad and your mom. And please tell your mom not to be a stranger or anything she needs. I'm here for her in Maryland's beautiful 8th District. We had 2 back-to-back all-nighters last week. I hadn't done that since college, and it was rough. It took me several days to recover from that experience. As well as from the nightmare of the legislation itself, which seeks to strip 14 million Americans of their Medicaid coverage and millions of people of their SNAP benefits and other nutritional benefits. And it's going to cut deeply into Medicare as well. And of course, it's an absolute budget buster that's going to add $2.5 or $3 trillion to our national debt. So there's really nothing to recommend it. We're trying to work with our friends in the Senate to do whatever we can to thwart any further progress in that bill.
Yeah. My hope and expectation is it will come out of the Senate looking very different. But we do have every frontline Republican voting to take away people's health care. And we're going to remind them of that today and every day until 26. I do want to talk about the Justice Department. A couple of weeks ago, they charged your colleague, Representative LaMonica McIver, with assault for doing her constitutionally mandated oversight duties at an ICE facility. Last month, Milwaukee Judge Hannah Dugan was arrested with concealing an individual to prevent arrest and obstruction. There's no doubt for me that the Trump administration has.
Hey, don't forget yesterday. I was just going to say yesterday, my colleague Jerry Nadler or a couple of days ago, had his office invaded by ICE agents who arrested one of his staffers for a while and held her handcuffed. She was released about an hour and a half later, as I understand it.
Wow. I mean, yeah. There's no doubt that Trump has weaponized this Justice Department. But this regime has been largely losing in the courts on many, many fronts. So my question is simple. How worried are you about this?
Well, we are winning indeed every single day in the courts. And we now have more than 175 preliminary injunctions or temporary restraining orders against this reign of lawlessness and terror throughout the country. And so we're winning on due process grounds. We're winning on usurpation of congressional powers. One grounds, we are winning to reinstate a lot of federal workers who've been falsely and unfairly sacked from their positions. So we are winning every day. And so people should remember that right now the rule of law is holding. Of course, we've got to make sure that the courts follow through with criminal or civil contempt against the Trump administration when it's lethargic in complying with those orders.
Lethargic is generous, I would say.
And sometimes contemptuous, So look, we're going to have to fight them everywhere in the federal courts and the district courts and the appeals courts and then in the Supreme Court, which is obviously the roughest terrain for us because Trump gerrymandered and sliced and diced and stacked and packed the Supreme Court in order to overturn Roe versus Wade, which he succeeded in doing, but it has stuck around to inflict some real damage. And significantly, we're fighting them also at the state and county and local levels with the attorneys general, with the governors, and with people in the streets, which is the single most important force we've got, is the force of popular opposition and resistance.
When Homeland Security Secretary Noem was asked to define habeas corpus, she said, quote, "Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country." Now, I'm not a lawyer, but you did teach constitutional law for 25 years. Is that the correct definition?
That's like saying the right of freedom of speech under the First Amendment means the right of the government to censor newspapers and speakers. I mean, it's the exact inversion of the truth. The habeas corpus is Latin for produce the body. And it means when somebody's being held by the government, produce the body and demonstrate that the government is in lawful custody of a person. But the presumption is, like we have a presumption of innocence in a criminal trial, we have a presumption of freedom and liberty of movement, unless the government can show you're somehow being lawfully held for some lawful reason.
Right. I mean, my concern about this, they're already ignoring the Constitution, ignoring the court rulings, as we said. So to me, this isn't just Kristi Noem being stupid, but it's the administration trying to gaslight the American people and actually redefine due process for, anyone who's listening. Do you think that's right? And how do we fight back?
Well, I agree with that. I think it's a mixture. I think she literally didn't know what it meant, but that kind of ignorance reproduces their attempt to re-educate the country in terms of a curriculum of authoritarianism. Everywhere I go in the country, I get questions like, well, doesn't Congress have to follow what the president does? Again, that's the exact inversion of the constitutional design, which is Congress under Article 1 is the lawmaking power. The president's core job is, quote, to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. It's the president's job to implement what we tell him, what we set down in law, which is why he's losing so many of these cases. He might not like the Department of Education or NIH or the Food and Drug Administration or what have you, but if we've appropriated money and it's passed the House and the Senate, it's been signed into law by the president, whether it was another president or him, that money's been appropriated. If it's been programmed, he can't impound it and redirect it and do something else with it. An Appropriations Act is a federal law like any other law, like the law which says you can't assault federal officers. And he doesn't have the power or the right to pick and choose which laws he's going to comply with and which he's going to execute. He's sworn an oath of office to uphold the Constitution. And the Constitution says his job is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that segues into what I was going to ask you, because, obviously he wants to act like a king, and our Constitution was created to limit his power so that he's not a king, and what you just articulated. But Democrats have very little power in Congress right now, and the Republicans, of course, are fully complicit in this historic authoritarian power grab. So I'll ask you the question that you get a lot. What can Democrats in Congress do right now to at least slow down the damage that's being done? I know you're doing a lot, and most importantly, what would you say to our listeners is the best way to support what you're doing? What can we do as activists on the ground?
Well, I appreciate all that. Look, first of all, people have to understand how anomalous this situation is, because the framers predicted, and mostly correctly up until now, that members of Congress, regardless of their political party, would stand up for congressional prerogatives and powers against a president who is acting arrogantly like a king. They believed that people would identify with their own branch of government. And yet we're seeing this utterly invertebrate, pusillanimous surrender by the Republicans in Congress, who are allowing Donald Trump to absolutely trample the powers of Congress, rewrite the laws, impound appropriated money. And they're not putting up a fight simply because they're in his party and they're acting like members of a religious cult, sleeping on the basement floor, listening to tapes all night, Right. So that even though they have only very slender majorities. I mean, remember the Medicaid budget busting bill, the one that's stripping 14 million people of their Medicaid and food benefits and so on. That bill passed 215 to 214 by one vote. And our colleague Jerry Conley from Virginia, may he rest in peace, died that day. It could have been 215 to 215. Some people think maybe they had another vote in the pocket, like Andy Harris, somebody who voted no, they could have switched over. But the point is that they don't have anything like the mandate they're so absurdly claiming. They have a very slender margin. It was built on the idea they were going to lower prices and, reduce the cost of eggs. Eggs have never been more expensive, and the price of eggs Benedict and the betrayal of our Constitution is exorbitant. But anyway, so we we've got the power by buttonholing particular members and putting pressure on them on the Republican side to weaken their resolve to wipe out Medicaid, to dismantle Title I and the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act and Title IX and so on. By putting political pressure on them, we can move just a handful of members, and then that's paralyzing for them. They can't get anything done. I mean, one of the reasons that Trump is proceeding like a monarch is because it fits his character and his self-image. But the other reason is they could never get this stuff through Congress. There's no way that they would be able to, for example, try to strip people of birthright citizenship or suspend due process in kicking people out of the country, or sack tens of thousands of federal workers, including FAA air traffic controllers, FDA food and drug inspectors,
Right.
cancer researchers at NIH. There's just no way they could make that happen. And so we're able to block legislative action simply by putting pressure on these people. They're afraid to face their constituents. I've gone out to numerous Republican districts to conduct town hall meetings. One of the places I went was up in Long Island, and I was in the congressional district of a Republican congressman named Barbarino. And we had more than 2,000 people there. It basically shut the town down. It was incredible, just the overflow crowds of people who wanted to participate. But he was the one Republican who did not vote on the Medicaid killing tax scam package they just passed. He claimed that he fell asleep in the cloakroom, which is a very flimsy excuse, given that everybody was sleeping and they were waking everybody up. So It's unclear exactly why he was Sleeping Beauty or Rip Van Winkle there. But anyway, I'm convinced that we can put the pressure on them to make things happen. And we've got the power to embarrass them and humiliate them for what they've been doing. We are educating the country about all of the corruption that Trump is perpetrating on America through his massive crypto scams and the $400 million Qatari jumbo jet bribery Air Force One gift, all of that stuff. And we're educating the people about the complicity of the Republican Congress.
Yeah. There are a few who should know better, notably David Valadao here in California, who lost his seat, over the ACA vote, and should know better than to try to take away people's health care, which people really like having. We're going to, as I said at the beginning, remind them of this. And I also want to add my friend George Whitesides. I was hanging out with him a little bit over the weekend at the California Democratic Convention. And I mentioned that we were going to be having this interview. And he said that you were the funniest member of Congress. So you've got a fan. You got a fan there.
That is George. High praise from George Whitesides.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. We've got to keep our sense of humor to get through this nightmare. And oftentimes I will write down particular exchanges and outrageous things that our MAGA colleagues say. We went to the State of the Union joint session, and when we left, went outside, and there was this huge car crash. Turns out the Speaker of the House's chief of staff, Mike Johnson's chief of staff, had plowed into the back of a parked police cruiser. So all the police descend on the car, they open it up, he staggers out, they administer a breathalyzer test, and, he's just absolutely floored. And
wow.
But Johnson issues a statement quickly saying that all is forgiven and he's a loyal staff member and everything. And there was a reporter there who came up to me, saw that I was, checking out the whole situation. and said, what do you think about this? And I said, well, it's clear to me that there are way too many DUI hires in the new Republican Party,
Right.
starting with Pete Hegseth,
I mean, that was a T-ball, right? That wasn't even a pitch.
Yes.
That was just sitting there for you.
So, the things that go on every day are just astounding,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you have to go. I want to ask you the last question that we ask everyone on this show. And that's, I was going to ask you, like, if and when we get the majority back in 26, what are some of the things that we can do to push back? And obviously, as impeachment manager, Trump was impeached twice, but still Republicans controlling the Senate. Not only was he not removed from office, but he's president again. So I kind of want to ask you that, but also we always ask folks, what gives you hope right now? What's giving you hope? And I think that's probably a little bit tied together.
Yeah. Well, we are going to have an extremely ambitious agenda to get America moving again in the right direction and to restore the government as an instrument of the common good instead of an instrument of private profiteering and rip-offs and scams against the public. I'm, as the ranking Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, I'm very interested in building a legal and constitutional and ethical infrastructure to prevent the autocrats and plutocrats and theocrats from doing ever again what they've done to us this time. So just to give you one small example, up until Trump, no president had ever attempted to monetize the office of the presidency the way he has and to turn it into a for-profit institution for himself and his family. And there have been rampant violations of the Foreign Government Emoluments Clause, which prevents the president from collecting money from foreign states. And so we need a really powerful statute to be passed, which says that upon receipt or offer that the president wants to take of a foreign government emolument, like a $400 million airplane or a $2 billion investment from Saudi Arabia or whatever it is, it must be presented within 72 hours to Congress for an investigation and then an up or down vote within 10 days so that Congress has to act on it. And if the president doesn't bring it forward, that's a criminal act that the president
it could
is
even
not
just
covered.
it could even just be an elephant tusk, right? Doesn't have to be $1 billion gift.
Abraham Lincoln got 2 elephant tusks from the king of Siam, which he loved, and he went to Congress to ask whether he could keep it, and they said, no, sorry, Honest Abe, we love you, but you can't turn them over to the Department of Interior. But the key thing about the story is he turned it over. Even Andrew Jackson, Donald Trump's big hero, got a medallion from Simon Bolivar from Colombia, and he wanted to keep the gold medallion and went to Congress to say, can I keep it? And they said, no, you cannot keep it. That's got to be turned over to the Department of State. So the idea that any president would attempt to collect a $400 million airplane or collect the millions of dollars that Trump got through the Trump Hotel or the meme coin he's already made hundreds of millions of dollars on. I mean, it's just an absolute outrage and scandal. And they don't even pretend anymore that he's not in business. Sometimes Donald Trump Jr. will say he doesn't even take his salary. Look, that's the only thing he's allowed to take. There's a domestic emoluments clause which says the president is confined to his salary in office and cannot take any other money, not just from a foreign government, but from the U.S. government. But of course, they've also been raking in millions over the years from the Secret Service and other federal departments and agencies, which are forced to sleep in the Trump hotels and go to the Trump golf courses and, all of that stuff. So anyway, that's just one example of how we can say, hey, we're going to rebuild all the guardrails here so that it's clear that public office and government are meant to benefit the people, not the president, not the president's family. All of us who aspire and attain to public office are nothing but the servants of the people. And the minute that we begin to act like we are kings and lords and emperors and czars, that's the moment to evict, eject, reject, impeach, try, convict, and start over again. Because the people in office are not the important thing. It's the people of the country that are the important thing. And we're just servants of the people. So what gives me hope? Well, when I was growing up, our dad used to say to us, when everything looks hopeless, you're the hope. So I grew up with that sense of responsibility. Like, there are always people who have it harder, much harder than we do. There are people who have fewer resources, financially, psychologically, emotionally, politically, to get things done. And we have to be in absolute solidarity with people. Solidarity is going to be the watchword for getting through this nightmare. It's got to be all for one and one for all. And an injury to one is an injury to all. And a victory for one is a victory for all. And we're going to get through this thing together. And when you look at it historically, there's a lot of hope there in the civilizing movements of American history, the civil rights movement and abolition and the women's movement and the labor movement and the peace movement and the environmental movement and the LGBTQ movement. Lots of them have faced far more daunting odds that seem far more insuperable than what we face today. We've been through this once with Donald Trump. We beat him by 7 million votes in 2020. He lied about it and claimed that he had won, and then unleashed both a political coup and a violent insurrection against us. But we were able to survive all of that, and he narrowly won this time. But we're going to be able to take the House back in 2026, maybe the Senate back in 2026.
Joni Ernst seems to be helping with that a little bit too.
Yeah, the more people learn about them, the more they realize none of these people remotely has the public interest in mind. So I finally take a lot of hope from the great young people of America. And, I come from a blue district, so I spend no money on pollsters, consultants, TV, radio, none of that stuff. I raise a ton of money, but it all goes to helping my Democratic colleagues across the country, and the Democracy Summer Project, which we have. It's now in 44 states, and it's to mobilize high school and college kids to learn about American history and the struggles we've had to build a more perfect union, and to be engaged in the struggle to defend democracy and freedom today. And so we had 1,500 kids last summer. We'll have something approaching that this summer, even though it's an off-year election. And we're hoping next summer we'll have at least 2,000 or 2,500 kids across the country spending their time in the fight to take America back from MAGA and the authoritarians.
I couldn't love that anymore. And I appreciate you so much for so much of the work that you do, but that Democracy Summer program too. I mean, that gives me a lot of hope. And when people are always looking at who's going to take up the fight and who's going to be the future leaders who are going to, transform the Democratic Party, it's those kids. That's who's going to do it. Yeah.
It absolutely is. And I'm going to send you, because you've got those beautiful posters there behind you, Steve. I'm going to send you our poster, which was made by Shepard Fairey, who made the Obama Hope poster. And he
did the Make Art Not War. That's a Shepard Fairey right there. Yeah.
That's why I was thinking about it. I noticed it. And but I'll send you the one he did of Democracy Summer, so you can have it in the back for all your fans and followers out there.
That's great. Well, thank you again, and thank you for representing my mom so well. It's an honor to have this conversation with you.
All right. Well, send her my love, and hang tough, and thanks for everything you do, because we know that the press is not the enemy of the people. The press is the people's best friend, and you are in the best tradition of Tom Paine and the other Democratic journalist patriots who've made America great.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back for our listener/watcher engagement portion, and we got a text message this week at our phone number, the 818-824-4286 number. So very exciting to get a text. I'm going to read it. I'm excited. I have not read it yet. I'm reading it for the first time live.
All right, you'll like it.
Okay, dear Jess and Steve, I really look forward to listening to your weekly podcast and appreciate both of your perspectives and your suggestions for navigating this current hate-filled administration. I am planning on attending the January 14th. I think this person meant June 14th.
Yes.
Yep. Protest. And have actively been spreading the word to others about the importance of going. I did, however, RSVP that I would be attending Trump's military parade with my friend Betty. That's my bulldog. Just to add to the anticipatory bigly crowd side that our moron in chief is expecting. Steve mentioned rewatching Idiocracy with his family over the weekend, and I wanted to share a picture of my front license plate that I had made when Trump started nominating all of his horrifically unqualified cabinet members. Keep up the great work. You're both an inspiration. Love your Chopwood Carry Water emails too, Jess. Thanks. And then Steve will post the picture. The license plate says unwilling participant in an idiocracy.
Yes.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. And yes, I know lots of people are RSVPing to Trump's parade. I haven't done it yet, but you should do it if you haven't and you want to.
Yeah. Thank you, Leslie, so much for sending in that text. And it really validates, my even talking about rewatching Idiocracy, which was a pretty idiotic thing to do anyway. But I'm glad that you related to it. And I love that license plate. Might steal it, but we'll see.
Fantastic. Thank you for texting us. Send your texts in, you guys. 818-824-4286, or leave us a voicemail about what you're doing.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget that all of the links for our actions are in the show notes, so don't just listen. You got to click those links and take action. Please subscribe, rate, and review our show on Apple, YouTube, or wherever you are finding it. And share our show with your friends and family. That really helps. Make sure they are taking actions to help us win. If you're able to support our show on Substack, we'd really appreciate that. And you will get an ad-free version of our show as well. We will be back next week with some more Practivist pods. So until then, don't forget, hope is an action.